Gudjon Idir, Smari McCarthy, Международен институт за модерни медии в Исландия.
Gudjon Idir, you have the floor.
Thank you. So we want to introduce the institute that I work for and Smari is on the board of.
Ще ви разкажем за института, в който работим с Smari.
And talk about the environment from which the IMMI proposal came and subsequently the institute.
Средата, от което дойде това предложение за модерната медийна инициатива.
So firstly, I should maybe say that we believe that a meaningful democracy relies upon access to information, therein freedom of information.
Ние сме категорично убедени, че една смислена демокрация зависи от свободния достъп до информация.
Freedom of expression, freedom of the press, and privacy of individuals.
Свобода на пресата.
And so during the Icelandic part of the global economic collapse, we obviously were one of the first to really feel the impact of that. And having a banking sector that was 10 times the size of the rest of the economy made us feel it particularly hard.
Банковия сектор беше 10 пъти по-голямо сравнено с мащабите на нашата икономика. Нещата много трудни.
During the collapse and the sort of reactions to it from politicians at the time, public trust in official institutions completely dropped, and there was a major political crisis and a social crisis. A social contract had been broken, basically. And in that environment, there grew a need for media reform, because the media also failed in its role as the fourth power. And that was quite. And then there was a particular thing that happened when WikiLeaks was operating in Iceland.
Нещо специално се случи, когато WikiLeaks работеше в Исландия.
They disclosed information on major loans with one of the Icelandic banks.
Разкриха информация за големи заеми от една от исландските банки.
And the state broadcaster was legally barred from reporting the news because Kaupthing took
със закон беше забранено на държавния оператор да излъчи новината.
And during the evening news, the news anchor at that time said that he could not tell the people what is really happening.
В самата новинарска емисия
and referred them to the WikiLeaks website if they really wanted to know what was actually happening, which obviously made the case more interesting to the public, and everyone went on the website to look.
В огромна степен повиши обществения интерес към този случай.
But that case proved a bit of a catalyst in the sense that we realized that we needed to reform our media environment and a grassroots movement and some volunteers at WikiLeaks collaborated together on putting together a legislative package that governs all sorts of different media and information laws, consisting of best practice law, and where there is no best practice to find, to create new laws, basically. And this legislative package was then presented as a parliamentary resolution in 2010. And it was sponsored by members of each political party, which is quite phenomenal, given that this is a very progressive, radical proposal pushing for a more meaningful democracy.
The
resolution was passed unanimously. in June 2010.
Беше прието единодушно през 2010.
In February, subsequently in 2011, the Institute is founded.
беше създаден
So the legislative package and the resolution is called the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative.
И сега говорим за исландската инициатива за модерни медии.
Confusingly, the institute is called the International Modern Media Institute. So the acronym for both.
Съкращението обаче за института и инициативата просто по една случайност съвпада. IMMI. Но говорим за две все пак отделни неща.
And the institute, our mandate is to push for, advocate for the implementation of all the different set of laws that are in the resolution.
Прилагане на всички законови пакети.
But our role has sort of grown and diversified over the years, where we have become a sort of watchdog for freedom of expression and freedom of information issues in Iceland. And we collaborate with various other international civil rights organizations, mainly on online rights. But in terms of what the resolution consists of and that part of it, I think it's best Smari takes over, because he was actually one of the people to write the resolution and conduct the research.
Okay, so we started off with simply collecting the a set of good laws from different countries around the world and looking at what was working well for journalists and people engaged in dissemination of information wherever. And so to go through them in no particular order, the first one is source protection, which simply refers to the right of journalists not to disclose their sources of information.
Първото е правото на журналистите да пазят конфиденциални източници на информация.
We based our proposals on a Council of Europe recommendation R2007, which suggests that a generic framework for how to manage this. And this was implemented in the new media law from 2011 during Catherine's time in the ministry. Including a statute saying that journalists could be fined or even imprisoned if they expose their source that has requested anonymity.
Като там се включваше дори точка, че могат да влязат в затвора, ако разкрият източниците си, журналистите.
But source protection doesn't work if there are other ways of getting at the information about who is talking to journalists.
Защитата на източниците не работи, ако има други начини да се стигне до тази информация.
And currently in the European Union there is a data retention directive which has been challenged throughout Europe.
Европейския съюз действа една друга директива.
Various countries, including Germany, Cyprus, Romania, have declared it unconstitutional.
Но много държави, като Германия, Кипър и Румъния, я обявиха за неконституционна.
And the European Court of Justice has declared it to be illegal, but still it is implemented in many countries.
Макар че е обявена за закон, не се прилага все още в много държави.
And what this data retention directive calls for is 6 to 12 months of retention of all metadata referring to telecommunications.
Същността на този акт е да се запазват всички метаданни от комуникацията.
So the origin and destination of every phone call, its duration, when it started, how much data was transferred to any communication. So from this data it's possible to reconstruct where you've been on the internet, in which order you visited websites. Now, the Council of Europe's Reykjavik Declaration suggested a speedy rollback, and the European Court of Justice has ruled this illegal, and yet Iceland still has this on the books. Many European countries also have it on the books. So, just some statistics there. Research from European Digital Rights and others suggested that 0.002% of police investigations are assisted in any way by retained traffic data. And that does not necessarily mean that it leads to conviction. Where statistics from Denmark suggest that the average person is registered or logged 225 times per day on average. And there have been a negligible, because it's a statistically insignificant increase in criminal case clearance rates. Which basically suggests that data retention is pointless and useless and expensive. So the first step is to remove it from current law.
Първа стъпка да отпадне от действащото законодателство.
So even though the Icelandic data retention implementation is based on the EU directive, it isn't actually an implementation of the EU directive. So Iceland can drop it from law without there being any problems. It hasn't got EEA relevance or anything like that. And then step 2 is it needs to be abolished entirely on the EU level, which should be the case after this ECJ verdict. But either way, if Iceland is going to join the EU, which is quite unclear, then we really don't want this coming back to us. But not all sources of journalistic information are anonymous sources. Some people are whistleblowers. They're known individuals who are taking great personal risks to inform of wrongdoing, and there are multiple types of whistleblowing. Some people
информират останалите за погрешни действия.
So some people conduct whistleblowing internal to an organization that they work in, informing their superiors of wrongdoing.
Това може да бъде вътрешно за организациите, в които работят такива хора, или външно.
Whereas others go to journalists. And we have a duty to protect these people who take these risks. And that kind of protection must involve physical security, financial security, social security, and psychological security, and psychological health. The next thing is that if we consider publishing as a kind of pipeline going from the source of information to the recipient.
Представяме като един тръбопровод, по който информацията тече от източника към журналиста.
There's a lot of intermediaries between the source and the destination.
Има много посредници.
And so in the old days those used to be printing houses and publishers.
Някога бяха издателствата и печатниците.
But nowadays this is more frequently internet service providers.
Интернет доставчици.
So there is a good set of laws on this that developed out of the US case originally, and have since been developed in the European Union in the e-commerce directive.
И това е разработено в Европейския съюз в директивата за електронна търговия.
But there are problems with the way that it is implemented in that it puts a lot of obligations on the intermediaries to know what they are supposed to or not supposed to do.
Има твърде много задължения, възложени на посредниците, неща, които те трябва да знаят и да се съобразяват.
So, for instance, it's quite common for people people to send copyright notices to intermediaries, hosting providers, and say, this is violating my copyright.
Много често хората се оплакват на интернет доставчика и казват, ето това нещо нарушава моите авторски права.
And because the intermediary just has to respond to that by taking it down, they don't necessarily always get to apply their same judgments on the issue.
И тогава се налага интернет доставчика просто да свали съответния материал.
And so, because of this, copyright has become one of the most common mechanisms for censorship in both Europe and
на практика авторското право се е превърнало в най-използвания механизъм за цензура.
And many other places around the world. So the suggestion for this would be to tighten this and make sure that there's always a court involved in the process.
Решението би трябвало да бъде винаги да участва и съдебен орган в този процес.
The copyright takedown notices must go through a court before they go to the intermediary.
Тоест съда да одобри дали това наистина е нарушение на авторските права и чак тогава да бъдат свалени съответните материали.
And of course there are further details.
Има и други подробности, които сега няма да обсъждаме.
Another important source of information is government records.
Друг важен източник на информация са архивите на правителството.
And in the original implementations of Freedom of Information Acts there were
първоначалният вариант на акта за свобода на информацията.
There was a positive obligation for state entities to respond to information requests.
Имаше изискване държавните институции да отговарят на искането на информация.
Meaning that a citizen could go to a state entity and say, I would like to have this document.
Ако някой гражданин отиде в държавния орган и каже, искам този документ, да си го получи.
But this often didn't work because the state agencies replied, well, you need to know the number of the document, or you need to know when the date of the document, or various other things, or would just simply say no.
Датата или някакво друго изискване.
So the second generation has created public listings.
Второто поколение на този акт вече изискваше публично изброяване на документите.
But the third generation is to start having a central registry of the documents themselves.
Вече да има централен регистър на самите документи.
Where every document is listed, even the ones that are held back for privacy reasons or national security reasons or any other.
Документи, дори тези, които са недостъпни поради изискване за частен характер.
And simply work on the basis that any document is automatically downloadable or accessible unless explicitly stated.
Така че предположението е, че всеки документ може да бъде разгледан или свален, ако не е посочено изрично обратното.
And when it's unavailable, state why it's unavailable and who said it should be unavailable.
И даже когато не е наличен, да бъде посочено по каква причина не може да се използва.
Now, another issue that is coming up quite frequently now is litigation against historical databases.
Друго много често срещано е съдебни искове срещу исторически бази данни.
If a journalistic organization is slapped with a libel lawsuit the day after publication, they will of course fight it because it's in their interest to fight it.
Защото ако един журналист подлежи на такава отговорност, те пък ще се борят.
But when as time wears on, there's a lower likelihood of them having a financial incentive to actually defend the case.
Все по-малко става вероятността да има нужда от финансови санкции за защита на този случай.
So we've seen this, for instance, in a case where Ukrainian oligarchs have gone to British newspapers and demanded that old news stories be taken down off their websites.
Това е, например, когато украинските олигархи си изискват от руските медии да свалят стари материали.
What they're essentially doing there is altering the historical record of society.
Така че всъщност те се опитват да фалшифицират историческите записки на обществото.
Having the effect that they're removed from search engines and other things, and
така че тези публикации да бъдат свалени от търсещите машини и така нататък.
So the solution here is to simply put soft limitations in place and hard limitations. The soft limitations saying that at a particular point in time
по-меки и по-твърди ограничения, като меките да бъдат
every journalistic organization must put a copy of every story that they've published into a public archive.
Всяка журналистическа организация непременно да изпраща едно копие от всяка публикация в един специален архив.
And then a hard limit which says that after this point in time, a certain number of days from publication, it's no longer possible to file libel suits regarding that particular article.
Където да се казва категорично, че след изтичането на определен период от време вече не се приемат съдебни искове.
And this would be again a reversal of a court verdict from France in this case, which set precedent in Europe.
За промяна на съдебно решение във Франция.
So libel laws are being abused quite broadly. England is the most notorious for this. Because British libel laws have a reversal of the burden of truth.
Например, има обръщане на тежестта на доказателствата.
So a defendant is required to prove that they did not libel or slander instead of the person filing the case needing to prove that they did.
Този, който обвиняем, трябва да докаже, че не е извършил това, което го обвинява, вместо обратното.
And this when combined with jurisdiction shopping or forum shopping, where people choose which court they're going to use in a global context, makes for a bad combination.
Така че, например, в тези ситуации, когато хората имат право да решат в кой съд да отидат, се получава наистина лоша комбинация.
So specifically, what is frequently happening now is globally people are being taken to court for libel in the UK as opposed to their home country.
Така че всъщност се получава това, че много често хората отговарят на обвинения за клевета в Великобритания, вместо това да се случи в родната им страна.
And this, of course, creates bad problems when it comes to enforcement.
И това, разбира се, създава проблеми при изпълнението.
There are good proposals for preventing this by saying.
Има добри предложения как да се да има превенция на такива случаи.
Court verdicts that go against the general rule of law should not be upheld in the local court in your home country.
Така че, например, решението на този външен съд да не може да се обжалва в родната ви държава.
And that is an example of what we call process protections, where you have protections against these kind of strategic litigations, where a person is trying to silence you by filing a lawsuit against you.
Ако някой опитва да ви запуши устата, като заведе дело срещу вас,
to continue publishing.
И става много скъпо да продължите да издавате.
And a specific goal here is to make it possible for small publishers to be able to stand up to rich litigants.
Целта е да се даде възможност на малките издатели да се изправят срещу богатите, които отправят обвинения за клевета.
Now that is kind of an example of trying to limit prior restraint.
Един пример за ограничаване на първоначалните ограничения.
But the generic case of prior restraint is actually forbidden in most modern constitutions.
Но всъщност генеричният случай на това нещо е забранено от повечето действащи конституции.
Where it says that no censorship shall be conducted ahead of time.
Където се казва, че преждевременно цензуриране няма да бъде допустимо.
But unfortunately there are issues in many places, including Iceland, with regard to injunctions that can be placed, and that's what happened in the WikiLeaks ClickThink case.
Но за съжаление има много случаи, където просто няма как да се действа на време.
As one of the final points regarding media ownership, it has been determined in European Court of Human Rights cases, Shurek versus Turkey 1-3, that owners of publications are considered to be liable for published works.
Се оказа, че собствениците на публикациите
and that means that the distinction between ownership and editorial management isn't separable anymore in European law, which is a big problem. And that's something that we may need to change laws in order to fix. But at minimum, we need to guarantee that the entire ownership chain is public, so that political effects on editorial processes are public, or at least knowable. And this was another thing that was guaranteed in the media law from 2011.
И това също беше гарантирано в медийния закон от 2011.
I'm going to just jump over the issue of refugee journalists.
Just 1 second to invite these. There are some people waiting. Because we discipline them.
Can you start again?
No. You continue. Just 1 second. Айде бързо.
I've of course gone through a lot of different issues very quickly.
Споменах набързо много различни проблеми.
What we can say is that none of these problems will ever be totally, completely, 100% fixed.
Трябва да подчертая, че нито един от тези проблеми едва ли някога ще бъде решен напълно и на 100%.
But for our purposes, we can say that at least 4 of these issues have been taken care of pretty well in Iceland.
Може да кажем, че специално в Исландия за сега сме се справили доста добре с 4 от тях.
And in addition, there are currently bills in the Parliament regarding whistleblower protection, ending data retention, and that have tangential effects on editorial neutrality. And there is also talk of libel reform, specifically rekindled to the foreground again after a woman in Iceland was found guilty of having posted a libelous comment on Facebook.
Една исландка беше намерена за виновна за една от публикациите си във Фейсбук и това промени законодателството.
So this is kind of where we're at. Maybe
за сега сме на този етап. Може би колегата ми ще продължи.
As you can see, it's quite a variety of laws that the resolution rests upon, and it's 5 years already. So legal change takes a long time, and we had a very understanding Minister of Education and Culture before, sitting right there. The steering group, which is under the authority of that ministry, which is tasked with implementation of the resolution, has pretty much been dormant for the last year and a half. Which does coincide with the transition of a new government.
Но това съвпада и с идването на ново правителство.
it's recommenced in the last month, and now it's already had a few meetings.
Няколко месеца възстановиха дейността си, вече имат няколко срещи.
And we're hopeful that they will actually complete legislative proposals more rapidly than before.
Да приключат с законодателните инициативи.
And DIMI is also participating in a working group that is tasked with an implementation of a resolution passed this autumn in Parliament.
Има и друга работна група, която се занимава с изготвянето на резолюция, приета в парламента.
Which is on the utilization of the internet and protection of user rights.
Която е за защита на правата на потребителите в интернет.
And within that working group, we hope to
тази работна група се надяваме
clarify and establish the great importance of creating and putting into force legislation that governs data and protects privacy of individuals.
Наличието на законодателство, което да управлява данните и да защитава правата на отделните личности.
We may also go into the domain of intermediary protection, which covers a whole host of things. Most notably
другото, което би
censorship,
могло да се работи е защитата на посредниците, проблеми като цензура, защита на достъп до информация.
Like Smari said, the bills that are, or the laws that are currently being discussed in Parliament or have gone to committees for further deliberation
за тези закони или се обсъжда в парламента или в съответни комитети за доуточняване.
Which is sponsored by MPs from two parties, and it has been a long birth. We have translated that act into English.
Имаме един закон, който е спонсориран от две политически партии, но е по-скоро бяла ляскавица и имаме го преведен на английски.
Experienced professionals from the US who have gone through the process of disclosing information as whistleblowers.
Тук имаше и опитни професионалисти от САЩ, които помагаха през целия процес.
And there is a bill on the removal of data retention, which should get added support given the ECJ verdict of April last year, where they invalidated the EU directive. There's a bill on equal access to the internet, which rests upon the ideology of net neutrality. And there's a bill on defamation reform, whereby journalists cannot be imprisoned for what they report, and there's another bill connected to that where any form of expression cannot be punished by a prison term, which currently is in Icelandic law. Blasphemy is one of those laws that we hope to advocate for reform on.
Така че в крайна сметка това е един от
законите
в Исландия, които много се надяваме да променим. Журналистите да не могат да бъдат в затвора заради това, което правят. Още не сме дори по средата на пътя, но
we're very hopeful that we will tackle some of the major components of the resolution in the next couple of years, and we're also hopeful of raising the awareness, the public awareness and the awareness of politicians within that time frame, so as to actually affect the next campaign for Parliament, which will be in 2 years' time.
При следващите парламентарни избори след 2 години.
But seeing as we have 8 minutes until the next presentation, we'd like to just wrap up now and invite questions.
Така че по-скоро, ако имате въпроси, вместо да чакате за въпроси, моля, питайте сега. Само още нещо.
Scrapping data retention for safety of journalists, sources and whistleblowers. It has a much bigger universal component, which is basically privacy of individuals it's a very unhealthy thing for a democracy where a government requires telecommunications carriers to retain information on the premise that maybe in the future the police will need to investigate you. This is violating principles of proportionality, and it's violating most countries' constitutional rights, civil rights. And it invites home the sort of, it's an Icelandic phrase, it invites home the danger of phone companies being hacked, and they have all this information that they otherwise would have scrapped, terminated. And this actually happened in Iceland. There was a hacking into one of the main companies there, the Icelandic version of Vodafone, or the Icelandic subsidiary, and a lot of private information was leaked. Text messages, and that not just the metadata, because the company really screwed up, but the content of the communication, so people could read each other's text messages.
Така че, например, хората можеха да четат текстовите съобщения, изпратени от останалите. И това си беше огромен скандал. Ако това се случи в малко по-голям мащаб, това ще привлече вниманието на хората към това, какво чудовищно нещо е съхранението на информация. Ако имате въпроси, заповядайте.
Чувствайте се поканени, ако имате въпроси. Да.
Можете ли да направите релация между монетарната макрофинансова независимост на една държава и възможността за рестарт на системата към по-справедлива форма на демокрацията, както е демократичният контрол, за който говорите? И в частност Исландия има такава, защото има щастието да не бъде в Европейския съюз. Всички държави в Европейския съюз за съжаление са зависими от Централната банка на Европейския съюз. Нямат право на собствена финансова.
Unfortunately, EU countries are dependent on the central monetary policy. How important is the fact that Iceland isn't?
With regards to our legislative proposals.
Извинявайте, как точно беше смисъл на въпроса, че малко аз
Връзката между монетарната независимост и възможността за справедлива демокрация.
How do you think of the relation between monetary independence and the chances for direct democracy?
Good democracy.
Пряка.
Справедлива, пряка.
So how monetary systems are governed is absolutely an issue that should fall within the purview of democratic management of society.
Как се управляват монетарните системи, разбира се, трябва да е важно в демокрацията, но
I'm not sure that any of the current proposals for improving democracy in Europe
което и да е от сегашните предложения за подобряване на демокрацията в Европа се ограничава от монетарната политика, не мисля.
There's also an open question of how one does democratize currency. Does one do it by moving to a Bitcoin-style model of no central banking?
Какво да променим, да приемем биткоин модела ли?
Or moving to a mutualist capital system or something else like that.
Или споделена капиталова система или нещо подобно.
These are all, important questions, but
важни въпроси,
they aren't really limiting free speech in any way. They aren't
но те, например, не влияят на свободата на словото.
Limiting any democratic movements that I know of that are currently active.
Не мисля, че поне доколкото аз съм запознат, ограничават някакви демократични движения, ако това отговаря на вашия въпрос.
Европейския парламент няма закон за лобиране, гласуван в България също. В Исландия имате ли такъв закон за лобиране И ако имате, как го използвате?
Do you have lobbying legislation in Iceland, and if yes, how does that work?
No, we do not. This is something. Lobbying is not anywhere near as formalized in Iceland as it is in many other countries.
В други държави всъщност лобирането е много по-формализирано, при нас в Исландия категорично не е.
This might be something that should be fixed, especially with regard to
може би ние трябва да работим по този въпрос.
Spending a lot of money and effort on lobbying, but so far there hasn't been any regulation about that to my knowledge.
Но за сега при нас това не е законово регулирано.
Can I jump in here for a while? Една от думите, които каза на български Смари пред Слави Трифонов в неговото предаване, беше думата шурубаджанащина.
Yes, we have a lot of that in Iceland.
Защото в това отношение се оказа, че сме близко България и Исландия. Те са 300 000 души и в повечето случаи се познават. И те се оплакват от корупция, от това по-мекия вид, който е наречен непотизъм. Защото някой като му трябва нещо, отива при братовчет си или при по-далечен братовчет, при някой роднина, и той му свършва работата. Така че лобирането вероятно има такава форма.
I believe I've been expanding a little bit on what you said, even though I have no idea what Daniela was saying. You know, lobbying implies distance between groups. Iceland is super small, 320,000 if I recall. So lobbying is just a term for a bigger country doing the same things. We have huge self-interest groups with big stake in political powers, political parties or affiliations. So lobbying is a problem as such as corruption, if we use just a more general term, but we don't have specific legislation to prevent it. But you know, the reasoning behind the media reform is to create access to information, to enable actual media to report the actual news. So this is one of the objectives of the resolution, but it's not specifically limited to Iceland. So Iceland is working within itself. It's supposed to create a safe haven globally for freedom of expression and freedom of information. So any sort of media outlet could move within Icelandic jurisdiction and benefit from the legal legislative protections offered there. And this is very much a huge part of our focus. So the same applies to bloggers hosting their websites in Iceland, so they're not censored by the company that owns the websites, or if you have a company that runs data centers and then they bring them to Iceland, then the data would be governed by Icelandic jurisdiction, and there's a particular case now unraveling in Ireland where Microsoft hosts data in Ireland, and a New York District Court has asked for access to a particular email account on the grounds of a criminal investigation. I think it's drug related, and Microsoft has denied this request on the grounds that the data is hosted in Ireland and the natural process is go through Irish jurisdiction, and now it's become an international issue, an extraterritorial issue basically. So this is something that we're very much focused on, that to make sure that the passing of the legislative package has a global significance, because otherwise it's pretty redundant to only be doing this for the benefit of a tiny country.
To add to that, currently, if you look at what kind of things operate within national boundaries and what kind of things operate internationally, it's becoming a little bit absurd. You have large companies operate globally and large criminal networks operate globally, but media operate mostly locally and as do law enforcement agencies. And as a result, you're starting to see this big drift apart, where in order to combat this, states are trying to reach further and further into other jurisdictions. And we're seeing this in the form of MLAT treaties, which are law enforcement assistance treaties between countries. We see this in new trade agreements which include criminal penalties, such as the TTIP and so on. And all of this is really creating a very odd scenario in kind of global politics that probably isn't very good. Now, there are definitely solutions to this, but we don't really know what those solutions look like right now. In the meantime, until we figure out what they are, our objective is to make sure that human rights in all of their forms are well protected globally, regardless of borders and so on. So that even if law enforcement and statehood are not globalized, at least human rights are. And that means that you should be able to seek protection in whichever country you want, and similarly want to raise the bar globally on what protections are afforded to people. And that's kind of the logic here. We know that this is a big mess that is created by globalism, but we can at least hope to be globalization on sunny side.
Any other questions?
Понеже казахте, че от големите въпроси те са успели да решат само тези 4, които кое според тях е следващото най-спешно и как си представят, че може да намерят решение?
What's the next most central issue? It's very difficult to pick and choose, but I think communication protection and data retention are interlinked, and I think it's important within communication protection we have intermediary protection, which is a huge topic, and it's a huge topic in Europe, and it's being discussed. And everything that concerns big data is now being discussed within Europe. I think this will take most of our focus and data protection as such. But anything that we can push through, we'll do. So sometimes it's not a nice word, but sometimes we have to be tactical and see what works. And now we're working in 2 parliamentary groups, a steering group and a working group, and we'll see what angles are best there. I mean, we're not political as such, we just have this mandate, and we have this clear vision of what we want to do, which Parliament has committed itself to unanimously, and we're always reminding them of the fact. But parliamentary resolutions have a tendency to, collect dust in drawers if there isn't someone really pushing it. So there is a priority in terms of necessity, but then there is also what's possible at any given time.
A short question, please.
Освен ако не е коментар.
Кънчо,
въпросът ми е следния. Не считате ли, че с усложняване на човешките взаимоотношения ние се плъзгаме по повърхността на проблемите, търсейки механизми за решаване на все по-сложните човешки взаимоотношения, а всъщност те опират и са въпрос на морала. Тоест, че много от проблемите биха се решили, ако ние залагаме на морала, т.е. на издигане на морала на хората и оттам много от проблемите биха изчезнали и тогава биха се опростили голяма част от проблемите.
I don't think you can enforce morality. But you can enforce law.
Well, you can. The church enforce morality, but we're not a law.
They just call it morality.
I think. I mean, the reason we have laws is because we need them. Apparently, it's not enough to know how to conduct yourself. And then we have a discrepancy of values between groups, individuals, and as soon as someone's more powerful than someone else, they have a tendency to want to hold on to that power. So our focus is very much, and this is the democratic angle. It's to decentralize power and to empower citizens, which you also do by empowering journalists. And I mean, I agree that it's important to try to raise awareness for, you know, the necessity and meaningfulness of privacy or of participating in your community. But you cannot make people do something, they have to find it within themselves. And a more enlightened public space is more likely to exercise moral agency in a manner that is productive for their societies, which again relies upon access to good information. One thing that I did forget in terms of explaining the sort of environment from where this resolution emerged, it didn't come from the political class or the business class or any sort of higher ups in society. It came from very regular people wanting to make changes, systemic changes, because they saw the thing wasn't working. And of course it's more difficult in some countries as opposed to others. But for me, coming into this late on, I've only been with IMI for the last year and a half. I was quite amazed that a few individuals with no political power as such were able to implement this. And then for a parliament to unanimously agree to a resolution as progressive. And then we're seeing quite positive things happening in some countries in Europe. Like Spain is engaging their citizenry, they're participating and they're taking power. And I think that's the sort of spirit that's behind this. It's share power, share information, build together. Sounds like a terrible campaign slogan, but you know, that's the sort of spirit. Have anything to add?
Simply, law is policy. Law is a group decision by people in a society, and that laws are really only in effect while people are willing to enforce them. Morality is also a policy, but it's a policy that you don't have external enforcement of. You do have social enforcement of it to some degree, but that's a completely different thing. And most of these issues are happening on a global scale, where you have different moralities and different competing ideas about how the world should be run. So I'd rather trust in law and hope for it to be effective.
те вярват в закона, силата на закона.
Yes. Are we insistent on asking this question?
Yes.
We'll give you a quick
answer. Just happily, when I see this, don't you think it's a bit David against Goliath? So we have a few activists, and in front of you, you have states, mafias, big money, big data. So sooner or later, you are going to be
Short answer is yes, but do you remember how that story ended?
One time.
Because it's a small country, access is easier. Like we said, you know, corruption is maybe a little bit more cozy in the family and maybe more hidden that way, but we have access to policymakers, and even though we're a small institute, we're more noticeable. And as soon as the institute was founded, it was inundated with inquiries from abroad. People are really interested. Journalists are interested in this, more so from abroad than from within Iceland for some reason. It tends to be that way. There are also big business interests in becoming a global safe haven, because it means it attracts media companies, it attracts data centers, various investments, and that is an angle that appeals to the majority of the political class. So it's not just a civil rights issue, even though that's obviously our focus. So it isn't a David versus Goliath in that sense, and also I would say, you know, that thing he had up there just a minute ago. If this was England, even if we'd been operating for 10 years, we wouldn't have had one legislative change. There's no way. I can't see that within that society. We would have to have a fleet of lawyers, and we'd have to be absolutely relentless. We're a small organization, and we've already effected legislative changes. I think that's pretty much an anomaly for a small NGO civil rights organization. So we're very much on the way, and we remain hopeful, even though we're always frustrated by the sort of lack of tempo.
Нека да благодарим на Smari McCarthy и Gudjon Idir.